Formula E's 2025-26 title fight is already shaping up to be an epic. 3 different winners representing 3 different brands from the first 3 races of the season may seem very Formula E in terms of predictable unpredictability, but there's already an established set of frontrunners at the head of the pack, and they've just been joined by familiar and perennial contender. After 3 rounds, just 6 points cover the top 4 in the championship, which includes the previous 3 champions, while Mitch Evans' win in Miami has vaulted him up the order and means Jaguar has something to show for its prowess after a pointless first 2 rounds. So let's look at the early lead gaggle of contenders, starting with the points leader and why that's not quite the overnight success it appears to be for Formula E's new team. After hitting the ground running at Citroen with excellent displays in Sao Paulo and Mexico City, championship leader Nick Cassidy endured his first non-score since his blockbuster move from Jaguar to the French manufacturer in Miami last weekend. The Stellantis cars, which include the 2 DS Penske entries for Taylor Barnard and Max Gunter, as well as Cassidy and his Citroen teammate Jean-Eric Vergne, simply didn't have adaptable pace in greasy conditions at the Miami International Autodrome. Cassidy sank without trace from 7th on the grid, having gambled on a dry setup, and finished the race lap 16th due to catastrophic issues in switching the Hankook tyres on. That performance caught Cassidy off guard, as he said he was confident going into the race based on the Stellantis car's performances in the wet last year. But Formula E can have a nasty habit of making exceptional drivers and teams look occasionally very silly, and this is precisely what happened to Cassidy as well as the other Stellantis drivers. Such was the strength of Cassidy's first 2 results though, a 3rd in Sao Paulo and his epic Mexico City win, that he still holds a 2-point advantage over 2024 champion Pascal Wehrlein. That is a remarkable start for Cassidy, who wowed Citroen with his racing foresight in those opening 2 encounters, as well as his renowned technical expertise. What frames it as so special is that the Citroen team is essentially the same operational and technical setup as the Maserati MSG squad from last season. That team was beset with ownership strife that occasionally spilled over into runs of poor form and political unease at Formula E taking back and managing its licence. That relates to MSG's botched takeover in March of 2025, which meant the team was cut adrift from an ownership standpoint. The upshot of this was the team's licence reverting to the promoter, Formula E Operations. The complication was that McLaren was also searching for new ownership and a provisional plan for that team to be saved, potentially using a Stellantis powertrain and brand for 2025-26, which collapsed. Paddock consensus was that the MSG slot was possibly prioritised, a stance that angered and confused not only those attempting to save McLaren, but also some of the other teams. Peculiarly, this still remains unresolved, although new ownership for the MSG entity is said to be close. Porsche's works team may not have actually won a race since Formula E's little-loved foray to Homestead in April last year, but its points-collecting capabilities this season have allowed it to claim recent scores in each of the season's 3 rounds. In Miami, new arrival Nico Muller's pole and second place was backed up with a 3rd from Pascal Wehrlein, whose route to the podium involved a dogged charge through from a lowly 11th place starting position. Wehrlein is one of only 4 drivers to have scored points in each of the opening 3 races. While he might not be challenging for victory just yet, he knows that consistency in accruing points was a major contributing factor to his own 2024 title campaign. While Wehrlein has already put himself into a strong position, another Porsche-powered champion had a harder time of it in Miami. After winning the first round in Sao Paulo and taking a solid 5th in Mexico, Andretti's Jake Dennis harnessed just 1 point in Miami, following a scrappy race where he failed to capitalise on banking energy early on. Despite that, Dennis is still in contention in the early title running, and sits just a point behind Wehrlein and 3 from leader Cassidy. And what about newcomer Muller? He had many doubters when he was slotted in alongside Wehrlein last summer after a secondment to Andretti for the 24-25 season. But in his own words to the race, after his strong Miami run, he said he had no problem with that notion because it's how this sport goes. He is ticking along nicely at present with points in each of the 3 races and secured his first ever pole position after defeating Felipe Drugovich, his replacement at Andretti, in the Miami qualifying final. Muller will have to do more to persuade many that he could challenge and beat Wehrlein over a season, but in terms of bedding in at Porsche, he's had an impressive integration. One complicating factor here is the Porsche and Andretti interference, which has been the subject of many of our opinion pieces over the last 3 years. It has yo-yoed from keen collaboration to occasional fermenting rivalry and back again. But Miami was one of the more positive races where it appeared there were genuine efforts to work together via Drugovich and the two factory Porsches in the lead pack for much of the race. One of the great tropes of motorsport is that defending a title is much harder than winning one in the first place. Oliver Rowland is about to test that out between now and August, though on the evidence of the first 2 races, he was going to be very much dispelling the aforementioned theory. Strong second and third places in Brazil and Mexico City provided a sturdy foundation for Rowland's bid for back-to-back titles with Nissan. Yet a familiar American hex fell upon Rowland again in Miami. Stateside, his record is absolutely awful, with only a 6th place finish in 2019 as any kind of real highlight. That pattern continued at the Hard Rock Stadium circuit as he was confined to a lowly 12th position after an extreme energy save in the first half of the race was never rewarded by the slow drying out of the track surface. But in reality, he never showed the pace to even capitalise on any opportunity anyway, and Nissan made plenty of errors in maximising its package in Florida. And like it or not, it raises just the tiniest of question marks about Nissan and Rowland's title defence. Rowland sealed the 2024-25 title in comfortable fashion with a weekend to spare, but the foundation for his title was an incredibly strong first half of the campaign. He won 4 of the first 9 races, finishing second in 3 of the others, but Rowland only scored points 3 times in the final 7 races, with a best finish of 4th. His strong start to this campaign immediately allayed fears that slump might bleed into a second season, but just as it's the case that one non-score like Miami is no reason to panic, so too it might be highlighting that Nissan hasn't quite got everything in order just yet. Rowland suggested as much post-race when he said Nissan had some issues that had been going on for nearly a year, and that until they are fixed, we won't be too fast. Nissan will be hoping to be on top of them for the rest of the campaign, but that's no straightforward task against the likes of an ultra-consistent Porsche, especially with the added complexity of developing its Gen 4 package concurrently. Pre-Miami Jaguar had 0 to show for its 25-26 efforts, as both Mitch Evans and Antonio Felix da Costa had each suffered myriad accidents and reliability issues. It was not unfamiliar territory for Jaguar, as a lean first half of the 24-25 season had tested its mettle throughout its departments, but that came before a sensational 5 wins from the final 6 races, and when da Costa was announced as Cassidy's replacement alongside Evans, it felt like one of Formula E's most potent driver partnerships had been forged. So no scores in Sao Paulo and Mexico City put the pressure on them to deliver in Miami, and while each driver did, there were important caveats. Firstly, the Jaguar Gen 3 Evo car is inherently quick in damp and wet conditions, so in that sense, an opportunity came to the drivers. Even after winning, Evans still expressed concerns about the lack of pace in the dry, certainly from a consistency standpoint too. There is also a fragility about the package, with technical issues impacting the weekend in each of the opening 3 races. Yet, still Jaguar converts its chances technically, and had Drugovich not speared into da Costa mid-race in Miami while they were running 3rd and 4th, a potential 1-2 result was on the cards. Da Costa, who let's not forget is a 12-time race winner and the 2019-20 champion, has embedded himself strongly into the Jaguar way, but has little to show for it right now, save for the 4 points he salvaged for 8th after being hit by Drugovich. But if he's able to follow in the wheel tracks of his predecessor Cassidy and go on a strong run of results, then he is very capable of becoming a title contender himself by the business end of the season. And Evans? If any driver is at a career crossroads, and it feels like it is the driver who now has the most wins in Formula E history, his Miami victory marking his 15th success. Out of contract at season's end and essentially barred from Gen 4 testing because of the distinct chance Evans races for a rival manufacturer, Evans is not only striving for a much lusted after title, but also putting himself in the shop window for a new adventure after a decade of peaks and troughs.